So we've talked quite a bit about how Biden's poll numbers are plummeting, and the biggest points of concern, I would say, are Arab and Muslim Americans. He was at 59% with them, and then he dropped all the way to 17%. That's astonishing. So, of course, backing Israel's destruction of Gaza is making him hemorrhage support in that community. And by the way, that's going to matter for some key swing states. That voting demographic is going to matter deeply for some key swing states. So horrible, horrible decision. The other group of people he's hemorrhaging are Latino voters. You know, he should be up by 30 or 40 points with that group, and he's not. He's up by 4. Devastating. Absolutely devastating. But perhaps the biggest demographic that he's really in trouble with, young people. Young people. Biden needs a lot of young people to come out and vote for him to win. Well, guess what? They're running away at 1,000 miles an hour. And so what's Biden's reaction to that in order to try to get them back on board? This is so sad. Look at this. Exclusive. This is in Axios. Biden emails 800,000 student loan borrowers about forgiven debt. More than 800,000 student loan borrowers are set to receive a message from President Biden Tuesday afternoon. The email, shared in advance with Axios, is a direct appeal from the president to beneficiaries of his administration's debt forgiveness push, as his approval rating among Democrats hit a record low last month, jeopardizing his 2024 re-election bid. Quote, "I hope this relief gives you a little more breathing room," Biden's Tuesday email states. "I've heard from countless people who have told me that relieving the burden of student loan debt will allow them to support themselves and their families or move forward with the plans they've put on hold. I'm proud that we were able to give borrowers like you the relief you earned," the email said. "I promise you that as long as I am president, I will never stop fighting for hardworking American families." The 813,000 borrowers receiving the email were those who weren't accurately credited for student loan payments that should have given them forgiveness, or people placed into forbearance by loan servicers who violated Department of Education policies. The email recipients to share what the relief means to them. The email asks recipients to share what the relief means to them and blames errors and administrative failures for shortcomings in the student loan forgiveness process. Biden's administration has forgiven $127 billion in student loan debt for nearly 3.6 million borrowers to date. About 2.9 million borrowers who signed up for the Biden administration's SAVE plan now have a payment of $0. Eliminating student debt was one of Biden's signature campaign promises, but the Supreme Court struck down his biggest relief plan in June. Since then, his administration has unveiled other relief proposals, including one prioritizing borrowers experiencing financial hardship. So, look, here's the most important point about this. We covered this thing in detail, 50,000 Ways to Sunday. Every single move that happened with this student loan debt reduction, we reported on this show. And the most recent maneuver, which in my opinion was a devastatingly terrible move for Biden, is they narrowed the scope even more of the student loan debt reduction. Now, I'm sure they would argue, hey, we feel like we have to do this in order for this to not be struck down by the Supreme Court. That's my guess as to what they would say. But you can't narrow the scope even more and then turn around and send out, letters bragging about the forgiveness you did do, even though you just made your own forgiveness weaker than it was. And now you're basically just trying to remind people, hey, remember when I did some student loan debt reduction? Like, you like that, right? Like, you going to vote for me? Please vote for me. Please. That's the vibe that this has. It's honestly a vibe of desperation. Like, hey, you remember these little things that I did that helped out? Now, look, I've been more than fair to Biden. In fact, I got heat for how fair and objective I think I was when it comes to Biden. I've done long segments where I break down all the areas where I think we made some real positive movement, all the policies that Biden did that I thought were phenomenal. I've listed those, and I've listed all the areas where I think he's failing. But the fact of the matter is this, and I'm just saying this as objectively as possible, like as a political viewer explaining to Biden what needs to be done for him to have a prayer in the next election. What I would say to him is this. Instead of sending out emails where you're like, hey, the little bit I did for you, you like that? We're good. Can you please vote for me? Instead of doing that, Biden already decided, I'm gonna snub the Supreme Court by, after they slap down his original plan, saying I'm going to do the Higher Education Act and still reduce some student loan debt. Well, if you're going to go around the court anyway, And you believe, as I do, that you actually do have the authority under the plain face reading of the Higher Education Act. You do have the authority. The Secretary of Education could wipe out all the debt that the U.S. government holds, which, by the way, is like 90% of the debt. Why would you not just do that? Because here's the thing. If Biden did eliminate all of the student loan debt held by the federal government, which again is about 90% of it, and he did it through the Higher Education Act, and then he turns around and tells the Supreme Court to suck his nuts, and he tells the Supreme Court, it's already done. We already wiped the debt slate clean. So even if the Supreme Court orders you're not allowed to do that, well, guess what? It's too late. Money's already gonzo. There's nothing we can do now. It's over. If you want to try to reverse engineer and decide who you're going to charge among the students, you guys don't have the infrastructure to do that, but be my guest. Go ahead and try. If Biden were to do that, then I think this letter would be a good idea. And you could even do it in the form of, it's not a letter. You're literally sending them checks for whatever payments are outstanding for them. The full amount, 100% of it. Here's a check signed by President Biden. Well, then I'd be out here singing his praises. Then I'd be out here going, this is smart and this could work. But when you do the student loan debt reduction, it gets slapped down. You try it again a different way, but then you narrow it more. You can't move it in the wrong direction and then kind of brag about it and remind people, hey, please vote for me because I did this thing. It's just weak. You know what I'm saying? It's just weak. And look, just as much as any other reasonable person in this country, I want to see Trump go down. But for Trump to go down, Biden's going to need to get his shit together, do what I'm talking about with student loan debt. And that's just one example. He would also have to stop arming Israel to the teeth and supporting them absolutely obliterating Gaza. There's some things that are seemingly are moral red lines to young people. One of them is supporting a genocide. I know those wacky young people with their weird priorities of being anti-genocide. So, eliminate all the student loan debt, stop arming Israel to obliterate Gaza, and then I think it'd be a different ballgame, right? But the fact of the matter is most of the good stuff done in the Biden administration was earlier in his administration. And there's a lot of, hey, what have you done for me lately? There's a lot of that going on. And it makes sense. And the other problem is for the election is people forget. Trump's been out of office now for a while, so people forget how much he was despised, how much he was hated. So now when you look at the polls, it's a lot of rose-colored glasses. And it always works like this. Time, unfortunately, heals all wounds. If you look at George W. Bush's polling numbers, they're way higher now than they ever were when he was in office towards the end. He was despised at that. He was in 26% approval rating. Dick Cheney had a 9% approval rating. These people were despised. But when they're gone for so long, all of a sudden, boom, the numbers go up. And there's a little bit of that going on with Trump, mixed with Biden sort of supporting a genocide and not much else at the moment. And so this just smells of desperation. And I don't think it's going to help. I don't think it's going to help. I don't know if it's going to hurt, but I don't think it's going to help because it's a little bit too little too late, isn't it? That's what I think. Hey, y'all, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time in the algorithm. Click the bell as well for notifications when videos drop, and watch that video on screen right now. You know you want to.